In 1966, the Chicago Bears drafted the son of a Pennsylvania coal miner in the 4th round. Doug Buffone would go on to play 15 seasons for the Bears and later be named one of the 100 greatest Bears of all time. His allegiance to the Bears never waned, even when he took to the microphone and witnessed some horrendous Bears teams.
The fact is, there's not the fear put into them, because this game is a lot about fear. You either do the job, or you go home and go sell hamburgers at McDonald's.
Doug told it like it is, and that's part of the reason his nephew John has dedicated this show to Doug. And now John Buffone is spreading Buffone-branded beratements just like his uncle.
Being a Chicago Bears fan is like being in a toxic relationship that you can't get out of. I think I'm finally done, and then they come back and they say, well, things are going to be different this time. I've changed. We've got receivers now. We've got the quarterback now. And even though I've heard this song and dance before, I go back every time.
And he's got pep talks too.
I love this team. And I know everyone watching and listening loves this team. So while we may be pessimistic and cynical, every one of us still has hope that the stars will align at some point. And if that ever does happen, you'll be glad you stuck around.
John is telling it like it is here on Buffone 55. And joining John are Alyssa Barbieri, managing editor of USA Today's NFL Wires, including Bears Wire, and also Danny Shimon, lead game and draft analyst for the Barroom Network. Buckle up and bear down. This is Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at breaking down the Chicago Bears. I'm John Buffone, and I'd like to welcome you to our second episode of the 2024 season. And if you watched last week's show, you may have noticed that throughout most of the episode, I demonstrated an attitude that I hate to share when we're talking about the Bears in the beginning of the season, and that feeling is hope. Yes, I have hope, and actually predicted the Bears to finish 11-6 this year. What the hell am I doing? Now, as a Bears fan, I must tell you that I genuinely do not trust hope. That's because the franchise has consistently taken that hope and doinked it away in so many different ways. I'm telling you this because the theme of tonight's show is to challenge my hope with discussions about this team's potential imperfections. But let's start with some introductions. First, my friend, producer, and co-host for the past 5 years, Alyssa Barbieri. She's also the managing editor over at USA Today's NFL Team Wires, including Bears Wire. Alyssa, how we doing?
I'm doing good, John. It's game week, and dare I say, you sound a little hopeful still.
I don't know what's wrong with me. It's I guess it's just the season when it's August into September and you haven't seen anything play out yet, and you're like, oh, this could happen, and then as Bears fans, we see that it doesn't happen all the time. But Alyssa, we got real football to talk about, real honest to goodness football to break down. It seems like we always have to wait forever for this.
It does, but I feel like week one is normally our Super Bowl, right? Just because, I mean, we're never the highest that we are in week one, all the hope and the optimism, but we are going to have some tough discussions tonight. But the way I figure it, if we can still have some hope after tonight's show, then it'll be a well-earned hope.
Well, a big part of those tough discussions is going to be the guy I bring on next. He's the Barroom's chief draft and game analyst, Danny Shimon. He's here for the therapy session. Danny, what's up, brother?
I'm good. Thanks, John. Thanks for bringing me on. Hello, how are you? You know what? Talking about hope, I know some of the topics that Alyssa's going to bring up today during B55, and this might break you. That vein that pops out here every once in a while, guys, be ready. But you know, like in terms of the word hope, I think the one thing that I look for this team, as opposed to some of the other teams, John, is like we see some of that young developing talent on both sides of the football. But we will talk about more of that later on. Also, speaking of hope, we're going to talk about some of the players. College football started, and it's never too early to talk about the draft, guys. That's what I love to talk about. And we'll talk about some of these prospects that Ryan Poles and company were out scouting this past weekend. So we'll talk about that later on as I come back to when we do the basement segment here with Buffone 55.
Awesome. Well, Alyssa, in case this is someone's first time listening or watching to Buffone 55, can you please give our audience a quick rundown on how this is going to work?
As always, we're going to start with our B55 segment. That's when I ask John 5 questions and he responds within 55 seconds. This segment has been a staple of Buffone 55 since the show's inception in honor of John's Uncle Doug, who wore number 55. It's also the part of the show that many fans find the most therapeutic. I certainly do. And this week, the questions I think will be among the most thought-provoking and provocative that John has ever faced. Then, after a quick break, I'm going to introduce a video essay by the podfather himself, Aldo Gandia, where he's going to preview the Bears and their upcoming Week 1 opponent. Then, our final block is called Buffone's Basement. That's when Danny, John, and I continue our main theme of the night, which is addressing concerns and so much more.
All right, Alyssa, I don't like how you said this is going to be provocative and it's going to, make my head explode, but I'm ready. So I'm ready to get started. But Danny, we're going to see you soon. Alyssa, if you're ready for B55, I guess I have to be.
See you, Danny. Okay, here we go. John, this is year 3 for Matt Eberflus. His 10-24 record is the second worst winning percentage in Bears history. This includes franchise worst streaks, including consecutive losses with 14 and consecutive home losses with 10. The Bears also blew 3 10-plus point leads in the fourth quarter last season, which tied a record for the most in a single season in NFL history. More facts. Of the 7 wins that Matt Eberflus had last season, only 1 came against a team with a winning record. And 4 of those 7 coaches he beat, they were fired. All that, and of course, we have to add that 2 of his staff members were dismissed during the season, and virtually the entire offensive coaching staff was fired after the season. Finally, my question. What is your level of confidence that Matt Eberflus is truly capable of being a winning head coach for the Bears? 55 seconds and go.
Okay, so we're talking about concerns this week, so I guess this works out perfectly. As I've said before, I think Matt Eberflus is a good defensive mind. I think the defense got a lot better when he took over the defensive play calling, but his ability to effectively be a good head coach in the NFL is greatly unknown. They lost some games they should have won last year. His ability to put together a staff is questionable at best, and while I think he's a nice guy and the players generally like him, the expectations have never really been higher for Matt Eberflus. And like I've been saying, the time for excuses is over. You have Caleb Williams. You have a new offensive coordinator. You drafted Roma Odunze. You traded for Keenan Allen. You signed DeAndre Swift. So, Alyssa, you read the stats. His record against winning teams is bad. And even when you're a below average team, a good coach should be able to scheme up a win or two against better competition. And we just haven't seen much of that. So I don't think I or anyone else owes Eberflus the benefit of the doubt until we see it.
No, that's a really good point too. Like what you brought about in terms of we don't know necessarily like what he's capable of as a head coach. And I can even go back to his first year and the roster that he inherited, right? Same with Ryan Poles. They had to tear it down, build it back up from the bottom. And, he did have his shortcomings last season. And one of the cool things was him getting up in front of the media and owning up to those shortcomings, including like how he addressed the media during press conferences and, like how much information he's giving up. So like, we'll see this season. I think this will be, thinking back to what Kevin Warren was saying about year 3 being like the year where things really need to start clicking. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a huge year for Matt Eberflus. So I think we'll truly get to see what kind of head coach he can do, because what kind of head coach he can be. Can he make the kind of adjustments, right? There are certain things, like halftime adjustments and certain things with challenges and things that he struggled with over the years. So we will see if he can make those adjustments and become a better head coach. But like you said, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, and I think, it's not just important for Eberflus and the Bears, but like all of the younger players, because if they fall short this year, which I don't think they will, but if they do, and they have a repeat of last year, 6-7 games, and they're not in the hunt or whatever, then Eberflus could be gone. And with him is the offensive coordinator they just brought in to bring along Caleb Williams, and the whole staff they just brought in to bring along some of the younger guys. So you don't want to see that happen where it's like, oh, well, they tanked again, and so they got to throw out this coaching staff and bring in another one, and Caleb's got to learn another system now. And as Bears fans, we've seen that too often. So there's a lot riding on this, and you just truly hope that. I don't question the character of Matt Eberflus. I don't question his football acumen. We just need to see it be put together as a head coach and be able to lead this team to the heights that we think that it can get to.
Yeah, and watching Hard Knocks, for example, and getting to really know Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus as people. I mean, Flus, like, he really seems like a genuine, down-to-earth, really likable guy, and his players really flock towards him. So we hope that he can be the guy. He's so easy to root for, but again, he has to prove it.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend like we haven't criticized Matt Eberflus in the last 2 years, where there's been plenty of times where we were talking about him potentially leaving town. So, like I said, I'd rather be wrong 1,000 times and the Bears win than me be right and they stink. So hopefully he's able to turn the corner and as a head coach, and he has the players he needs now, and him and Poles seem to be, in sync there. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Here's hoping. Okay, moving on. Let's stay with the coaching staff. No one I know has argued that former offensive coordinator Luke Getsy was wronged when he was released in January. But there are questions about new offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. For example, last season, Waldron's offense in Seattle averaged 322 yards of total offense. That's 1 yard less than the Bears averaged last season. As for points scored, the Seahawks averaged 21.4 points per game. The Bears had 21.2. That's a virtual statistical tie. As for the red zone offense, the Bears were 15th in red zone touchdown percentage. The Seahawks were 26th, not even close to Getsy's offense. Finally, Waldron was consistently criticized for not running the ball more. Last year, the Bears' rushing attempts were second most in the league. The Seahawks, they were next to last in rushing attempts. The Seattle sports media even criticized Waldron's lack of commitment to the run.
Man, it felt like at least 4 or 5 games. I remember Pete post-game press conference. Man, we just didn't run as much as I would have liked to.
Yeah.
He said it. He said it himself, unprompted. Nobody asked the question. It was his lament right there. Yeah, really, we got to get that going. We got to get that going. Yeah. We need to get that run game going. I wish we had more attempts. Those were his words.
Yeah.
With all of that said, John, where is your level of confidence that Waldron will work for Chicago? 55 seconds are on the clock.
So I'm not a scheme wizard like Danny, so I'll be interested in his take. But when you lay out those stats, it doesn't sound great at all. But he was working with Geno Smith and Drew Lock last year, so maybe with a more dynamic quarterback, we'll see improvements. I know Seattle they used a lot of 13 personnel, almost more than anyone else last year, which is 1 running back and 3 tight ends, and that probably had a lot to do with the offensive line struggles. I do believe we'll see more explosive plays this year, not just because of the additions at wide receiver and quarterback, but because Waldron did rank pretty well in explosive plays during his time in Seattle. Now, the tendency to get away from the run game does concern me a bit, especially with a rookie quarterback. You'd like to have that safety foundation for a young quarterback while he gets his feet underneath him. But I do like that Waldron has worked with a variety of head coaches and has also worked with quarterbacks with different styles of play, like Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Geno Smith. So much like Eberflus, I'm reserving judgment until I see the product on the field.
Yeah, and everything that you just mentioned there, that was what the Bears were looking for when they were doing their offensive coordinator search, where there was almost upwards of 10 guys that they interviewed, and his experience with a multitude of different quarterbacks and different styles was something that they really looked to, as far as including an experienced play caller as well. But like you said, I think coming to Chicago, there's a lot more talent here to work with. And in terms of the run game, I'm not going to lie, that's something I'm concerned with as well, because for a rookie quarterback, that run game is going to be his best friend. And the Bears have had like a top 2 rushing attack the last 2 years, but maybe it's time to finally open up the passing attack here. But I will say something I was encouraged by was seeing, there are a lot of concerns with Waldron coming in that Kari Blasingame wasn't going to be kept because normally he doesn't utilize a fullback, but they did keep him. So, I'm encouraged. It's the little things here.
Yeah, and with different personnel and with Waldron having that variety of experience, maybe he's able to look at this roster and say, "Hey, we should be able to run the ball." And I know that the Bears have, the rushing attack the last few years has been highly ranked, but that's also from having Justin Fields run the ball a lot as well, adding to those rushing numbers. So it's understandable if they don't rush for as many yards this year as they did last year, just because the team is different, the personnel is different, and the scheme is different. So we'll see. Once again, we can't talk about the trends until we see it in Chicago. So week 1 might say a lot.
For once, I would like the Bears to average more than 200 yards passing in a season. So, I digress.
Fine.
We'll see. But let's move on to our third question. So, John, since October 8th, 2023, Caleb Williams started 6 college football games for USC. He and his team lost 5 of those 6. He hasn't played in a winning game since beating Cal back on October 28th. The downward slide started when USC visited Notre Dame, and Caleb threw for less than 200 yards and 3 back-breaking interceptions. John, we know Caleb, or any quarterback, can't carry an entire team, but doesn't his second half performance at USC give you some pause that he's more likely to have a slow start to his NFL career than most of us are hoping for? Aldo, get that clock going.
Look, I know it's easy to get incredibly excited about Caleb Williams, and we should be excited about Caleb Williams. And we know the Bears have provided him a very soft landing spot, possibly the best landing spot that a number 1 overall pick has ever had. But I think it's important to not be too impulsive either way. If he throws for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns early in the season, we shouldn't think that that's how it's going to be every single week. And on the other hand, if he has a rough game and throws a couple of picks, it's not the end of the world and he's not a bust. It's possible that he has a slow start, but that's what the supporting cast is for. That's why you bring in Keenan Allen. That's why you draft Rome Odunze, in addition to having DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. Plus, the schedule is favorable in the way that the Bears don't have a division game until week 11, so he'll have the opportunity to work out the bugs before the division game starts. So I know it's an almost impossible ask, but I think you have to understand that there will be ups and downs, and you can't get too impulsive when it comes to Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I think the key is to keeping expectations realistic. I know there's a lot of hype surrounding Caleb. We're guilty of it as well. And we want him to come out of the gate fast and have a CJ Stroud type of rookie season. But, that doesn't happen all the time. That's why it was so impressive. So I think, like you said, I do expect there to be ups and downs. He is human. Even though he's a really talented quarterback, it's going to take him some time. And like you said, the benefit of having that supporting cast, which is probably arguably the best position a number 1 pick quarterback has ever come into. And also having that favorable start to the schedule will definitely help. So he's got some time to work the kinks out.
And when you talk about number 1 overall picks, they're traditionally on the worst team in the league. So those bad games are, they look even worse because there's no one picking up the slack. That's why there's no one that can say, okay, let's lean on the run game, or at least the defense can keep us in the game. Or, we have a high flying receiver that can go up and get the ball, or they don't have that. So with the Bears, you have good receivers, you have a solid defense, and you should be able to run the football. So even when he does have a step back, you're hoping that, somebody can lift him up. If he's struggling, okay, let's get to the run game, or let's, use the tight ends as safety blankets. So on bad teams, you may not have that luxury. I think the Bears will be able to do that. So even if he is struggling, I think that they can stay competitive in games.
And like you said, he has the benefit of having a defense that's not going to give up 30 points a game like they did at USC, where he has to score 40 points to win. So
they had a terrible defense.
It should be a lot better. Yeah, terrible. So, things are looking up for Caleb. So, moving on. The Bears defense certainly had a much better second half than they did to the start of the season. Remember, back to mid to late October, their defense was ranked 31st in points allowed. They did climb to 20th by the end of the season. Even Matt Eberflus appeared a bit annoyed just a few weeks ago when reporters claimed his team was, quote, a top 5 defense. And he basically said none of the prognostications on his defense means a thing. Flus is right. So what have they done this offseason to give you hope that they can truly be a stellar defense in 2024? 55 seconds and go.
Well, I think it comes down to growth. I just look at this defense and I see a lot of potential. I'm excited to see Tyreek Stevenson with another year of experience. And Kyler Gordon is going to craft out an important role in the nickel spot, possibly. Then, of course, you have Jalen Johnson in his prime, and the safeties are solid. So then you go to the other level of the linebackers across the board with Edmonds, Edwards, and Sanborn. Very solid. It's the defensive line that has the most questions and could potentially surprise some people. I said last week I'm excited to see Javon Dexter this year. Obviously, you have Montez Sweat to anchor the line. You're hoping that you can get something out of Walker and Billings. And I think everyone is excited to see Austin Booker get involved, if that's possible. I don't expect him to be a Pro Bowler, but he could make some impact plays. And I also think this defense is capable of creating a lot of takeaways this year. So I think the term stellar is subjective and depends on your definition. But with Eberflus calling the plays and the potential of some guys taking the next step, this defense could be more than good enough to facilitate a playoff run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think back to last season when it felt like we watched two completely different seasons, especially when it came to the defense. Once, pre-Montez Sweat and post-Montez Sweat, and just what they were able to do after Sweat was added to the lineup. Like you said, I think just his impact on that defense, and they gave up, I think it was roughly 19 points a game after Sweat was added to the lineup, and all the talent that they have on that roster. And now they've had another year of another year to develop that chemistry. And listening to the players talk, it just sounds like they're more on the same page this year, and they're really gelling. And I feel like they have that confidence. It's not cocky. It's just they're really confident in this scheme. They're going to be year 3 under Eberflus. They have that talent. They have, like you mentioned, all of outside of the defensive line. Maybe this is a really deep defense. So I'm really excited to see what like you said, some of these second-year players, some of these young players taking that next step. Javon Dexter, someone I'm going to be watching as well. Austin Booker. I mean, there's talent up and down on this roster. It's all about, are they going to be able to capitalize? And listening to Jalen Johnson talk this week, he was like, I'm tired of the hype. We just have to go out there and prove it. And I think that that's different than in the past. Like, it was about talking themselves up. Now they actually believe it, and they're going to go and prove it.
Yeah, and like I said last week, you don't have to be the 85 Bears. You don't have to be the 2000 Ravens. You just have to be opportunistic and show up when in the most important moments and get a takeaway here and there to get it back to your offense. You don't have to in 2024, you're not going to win too many games 6-3. So you want to be able to score points, and then your defense is able to create some takeaways or get off the field whenever the game is at its most crucial point. So I think that they have the players that can create those big time takeaways, and even if they give up 20 points, they can hopefully score 24-28. So we'll see.
It would be nice to have the Bears, where the offense and defense play well at the same time, because that's something we're not accustomed to.
Never happens. It never gels at the same time, really. It's
Never.
Always like the defense is phenomenal and then they can't score. Or back in the Trestman years where the offense seemed to be taking a step up, but it was the most horrendous defense I've seen in recent memory, I think. I remember like the Packers and the Patriots were like back to back. I think they gave up like 90 points or something in 2 consecutive weeks.
We're talking about concerns, John, but that's going a little too.
Yeah, I'm not at that level, but I'm just saying I know I know what a bad defense looks like, and I know what a bad offense looks like. I think as Bears fans, we are well accustomed to both. Hopefully, we can see good on both sides of the ball.
Happy medium. Here we go. Okay, so last question. The theme tonight centers on hope. So I must ask, how much hope do you have that the Bears will finally build a new stadium? Because it sure seems like there's nothing going on along that front. And is Kevin Warren going back to Arlington Heights with his tail between his legs?
Okay, I'm hoping you're turning the clock off for this one. But I feel like this is a situation that goes stagnant and then all of a sudden goes into hyperdrive. A new stadium seems inevitable. It's just a matter of where and when. Kevin Warren got this job under the notion that he was going to usher in the new stadium, and it was supposed to be in Arlington Heights. And in my heart, I still believe that's where it's going. There is too much money to be made, and while it will take a lot of construction and logistics and compromise, this place would apparently be paradise, so to speak. And if you've ever been to a Bears game, you know there are issues: the parking, the game day experience, the lack of things to do around the stadium, the transportation. I'm imagining a new stadium with an entertainment hub beside it, with restaurants and bars and hotels and a Bears museum and an interactive fan experience. I'm imagining a place to park by the stadium to tailgate without having to have a permit. I'm envisioning this as a place to be before the game and after the game. And from a Bears point of view, it's a place to host a Super Bowl, host a Final Four, host concerts all year round, instead of saying, okay, we can't do anything in February because it's Chicago. So like I said, there's too much to gain to not see this through. And honestly, I think Kevin Warren knows that. But we got a lot more Bears talk coming up, and Aldo's video essays also on the horizon. But first, let's take a break for some of these messages from the Barroom Network.
Do I think we improved from Justin Fields? Hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. There was some old moldy food in your car, and we hung the mint Christmas tree up in the gas tent. Okay, now.
I remember those.
Yeah, remember? Over-unders at 46, and the odds are -3. Mm-hmm. I'm taking the Ravens plus the 3, and I'm going to take the over 46.
Ooh, okay.
The Ravens 43 and the over 46.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88-85% of the snaps. He's got to be like Park linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Well, you're looking at traits. And remember when he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so up?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate.
Former Bears scouting director Greg Gabriel talks football live every week on the Barroom Network. Also available on demand.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. Before we get to Buffone's basement, the Podfather has put together a video previewing the Bears' Week 1 opponent, the Tennessee Titans. More from Aldo Gandia.
Rodgers, end zone throw, and it's intercepted.
2018 was the last time the Bears had a winning season, and yet it ended in a manner that will forever be difficult to see again.
What is wrong with you people? Afraid to look ugliness in the face? Well, here! Look at it! It's ugly, isn't it? You look at it! Look at it! Look at it! Look at it! I want all of you to look at it!
Oh my goodness. The Bears season's going to end on a double doink.
It also seemed to spark a series of uninspiring seasons. The last 5 seasons, we have seen the Bears lose 51 games and win only 32. Now, as we approach the 2024 season, 39 years after the team's last and only Super Bowl win, we must ask ourselves, what have we learned about how to build a Super Bowl team? Ryan Poles has studied winning, and he's learned that building a winning team takes patience, especially when you inherit a team mired in mediocrity with high-salary players delivering low satisfying results. During his first draft, Poles put patience on full display.
We really tried to do the best available. And I remember that first year, that was a big question. Were you going to get a receiver? Are you going to get a receiver? And we didn't have the first round pick. And we ended up with Brisker and Kyler. And really, we felt like that was the best available, and we knew that it was going to take time to really get all the pieces. And there's still space for us to improve as well.
Yeah, it's taken some patience early on.
Over his first 2 years, Poles' patience was rarely appreciated by a fan base demanding their devotion to the Bears pay dividends. It appears that the patient approach to Poles' roster building might start to pay off. Maybe we'll see a playoff run this year, a deep run next year, and a Super Bowl parade in 2027. That's a reasonable expectation because Ryan Poles will not be able to address all of the team's needs until after this season. He needs Pro Bowl players on the offensive line. He needs more pass rush depth. And potentially, he may need to address the coaching position if indeed Eberflus is really Eber bust.
Just want to thank Ryan.
Poles' investment in his coach has truly tested the fans' patience. Now is the time for the head coach to deliver. Flus's fate may hang on a playoff appearance. As for the rest of the team, and specifically this year's picks, it is paramount that Williams and Rome Odunze pay off their first-round investment. Karan Amagaji must contribute on a backup basis this year and show an ability to be a more than capable starter in 2025. Tory Taylor has to deliver the thunder from down under this year and become a true sensation. And Austin Booker has to take what we've seen him do against second stringers and replicate it against the best.
Winning habits makes you a winner. Losing habits makes you a loser.
Those draft picks must all be a part of the nucleus of this team.
The Chicago Bears select Darnell Wright.
And there are other picks from Pulse's first 2 drafts that have to begin contending for Pro Bowl consideration, like Darnell Wright, Gervon Dexter.
Dexter with good pressure. Love on the keeper, flip it out.
Tyreek Stevenson.
Oh my! Tyreek Stevenson, the rookie quarterback, read it all the way and delivered the blow.
Brisker and Gordon. And maybe even Braxton and Velus Jones. Yes, the 2022 third-round pick could become that specialty gadget player most teams crave.
Touchdown Bears.
Finally, every veteran on the team must take it up a notch. Montez Sweat must stay on the field during crucial situations and deliver big plays. Tremaine Edmonds must take his place among the legion of great Bears inside linebackers. Jalen Johnson must continue his ascension to a great Bears corner. On the offense, Tevin Jenkins' health issues must be cured and his intensity matched by the other offensive linemen. Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet, and DJ Moore are all capable of exceeding or matching their best seasons ever. So what should we expect this season from the Bears? Perhaps we should follow Ryan Poles' lead.
Obviously, getting into the playoffs and winning playoff games would be outstanding. But I think the biggest thing is, like, can we take that big jump from where we were last year to this year? And I think we're capable of doing that.
I'll take that big leap, absolutely. It's time for us to go from double doink losses to double-digit wins. For Buffone 55, I'm Aldo Gandia.
Well, another incredible video by Aldo Gandia. You know what? The Podfather pulled a fast one on us here, though. He's like, I got a preview for a video for you guys. And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to talk about the Titans. And no, we start that thing off with the double doink being repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated. And I got Patrick from SpongeBob yelling at me the entire time. So it's like, why do you have to tear my hope out of my body right off the get-go? But a lot of stuff to build on towards the end there. We're bringing Danny Shimon back on. Danny, what do you think about that?
We're talking about hope. We're trying to get you to feel good about this season, John, and he brings out the double doink just like that. And,
yeah.
You know, the reason why he didn't have a preview tape is because there wasn't enough punting coverage of the Tennessee Titans punter, so he couldn't do that. It just didn't feel right. He had the shakes, so he had to like, you know what? I'll put this in. I'll drop in a little Tory Taylor for you here and there. Get that punting fix for himself.
He had me covering my eyes for like a solid minute. Like,
I'm glad the camera was not on us because I sunk into my chair like a child with holding like I'm like a 5-year-old watching a scary movie. I'm just like this.
That double doink has been one ingrained in my head that I remember specifically what I did, where I was, what happened, my reaction after that game, and I literally flung a notebook that I was taking notes. I flung it across the room. It just disintegrated into pieces because I threw it so hard.
Yeah, I was, because I live close to Philadelphia, and so around a lot of Eagles fans, and so as soon as it happened, I very quietly, I turned my television off, I turned my phone off, and I went to bed because I didn't want to talk to anyone. I'm pretty sure people were doing wellness checks on me, but I did not want to talk to anyone.
You're like one of those people that during Halloween they turn off the lights and close the shades, but like no one's home.
I absolutely do that.
You're one of those people.
I 100% do that as well. Yeah.
I ran to the bathroom and just like sunk to the floor.
Well, guys, we're here to talk about hope.
Okay, no more double doink.
6 years ago now, or maybe about 6 years ago now. So okay, let's talk about the current team. Danny, in our first segment, Alyssa brought up the mega mess Matt Eberflus has produced in his first 2 seasons as the head coach. Now, I'd like to know from you, has the Bears head coach been a victim of circumstances, or is it Bears fans being victimized by a head coach who is over his head a little bit?
Well, I mean, I'm on the record saying I'm not a huge believer in Matt Eberflus, but you got to, say like it is, right? In the first couple of years, obviously the plan was to go ahead and tear this thing down and build it back up again. The players weren't there, the talent wasn't there. But what bothered me was a lot of times the adjustments in game was where he really kind of lost me there. Remember that first year where his defensive coordinator, there was no pressure on the quarterback, and you guys are mirrored in a 3-14 season, 3-16 or 3-13 at the time, I believe was. Just go ahead and put everything on the table and bring the kitchen sink and generate pressure. And he just didn't do that. And last year, it took him, an 0-5, 0-4 start before we saw him take over the play calling and generate some pressure. And lo and behold, that started getting some confidence on his team. So to kind of answer your question, John, there's a big question mark for me when it comes to Matt Eberflus. And, what Hard Knocks has kind of showed me, and I think showed everyone, is we know why he's a player's coach. Players, appreciate him. Players play hard for him. Players like him. But, it's one thing being liked by the players, but also being, going out there, having those guys and putting them in a position to succeed. And a lot of times I just feel like, he hadn't done that and done a great job in being able to go and put those players in a position to succeed and pull out victories. Now, he's got the most talent he's had in his 3 years here in Chicago on this team currently. I'm not sitting out here saying he's got to make the playoffs, but we got to see improvement. We got to see development from the young guys. We got to see Gervon Dexter, Zach Pickens, Tyreek Stevenson. These young guys continue to get better, and then obviously incorporate this year's draft class, and then show like all of a sudden that clip, see that big jump, whether it's 9 victories, 10 victories, whatever it is, whether that means a playoff, spot or doesn't mean a playoff spot. But we got to see this team developing, these young players developing and taking that next step, and that's where. And then I'd say, all right, Eberflus has this ship on the right path. And I think his staff is developing these players as they should.
Yeah, I think they absolutely need to be in playoff contention in the last week, though, because you look at the roster as it's constructed, and they won 7 games last year. Probably should have won a few more because they gave away a few games. But so are they 2 games better than last year? They better be. And if they could, should they be 3 games better than last year? They should be. So once you start getting in that 9 and 10 win realm, you should be competing for a playoff spot in the last week. Maybe it comes down to the last game, which I believe is the Packers, if I remember correctly. I think they play the Packers the last game this season, so maybe there'll be an emphasis on that. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I think that they absolutely, they absolutely should be in playoff contention come the last week, and we'll take it from there. But Alyssa, I want to stay in that same vein with the coaches. You and I talked about Eberflus and Shane Waldron during B55, but let's talk about Eric Washington, the new defensive coordinator. Doesn't seem like he'll be calling plays throughout the season, but what do you think about them bringing him in? I believe he has a specialization in defensive line.
Yeah, well, I think it's certainly long overdue after Alan Williams was let go last September. I mean, it's been a while, but it also keeps with the theme of Ryan Poles kind of keeping it local. Washington got his first NFL coaching start with the Bears as a defensive assistant and then later a defensive line coach. And, he's an experienced defensive coordinator and a play caller, though, like you said, John, he's not going to be calling plays, at least to start. Eberflus said earlier in the offseason he's going to stick with calling plays. But he is capable of it. And the thing that I like about Washington, like you said, his specialty is the defensive line, and that's the team's biggest weakness on defense. And when you have young players like Gervon Dexter and Austin Booker and Zach Pickens on the roster, I think having him there is just going to be huge for their development. And perhaps you find the answer. Maybe Gervon Dexter becomes that 3 technique that you've been searching for with a little development and working with him. So really a big fan of his and excited to see what he can do with this defense.
Yeah, the one hire, I can chime in real quick here, John. Sorry. The one thing with Eric Washington that really excites me about this hire is just go back and look what he did at Buffalo. Look at the young guys, AJ Epineza, Ed Oliver, Gregory Rousseau. All these guys have gotten better under his tutelage, and that's Alyssa hit the nail on the coffin right there. That is going to be his specialty, is getting those young pass rushers, the Gervon Dexters, the Zach Pickens, the Austin Bookers, some of these young guys to develop, even Daniel Hardy, for example, getting these guys out there, and Darrell Taylor as well, the guy that just picked up from Seattle, getting these guys to perform at a high level, and then, eventually make that defensive line one of the strong suits of that defensive unit as a whole.
So we'll see how the progression of that defensive line and the defense and in general, like you were talking about, Danny, if they do take that step forward this year, we're hoping that they are. But, let's talk about the actual game they're going to play this Sunday. The week 1 game is just days away. The opening game against the Tennessee Titans. Danny, you studied some of these specific matchups against the Titans. What is the biggest matchup advantage that the Bears roster has over this Tennessee squad, and where do they maybe not match up as well?
Well, and I don't know if it's because it's opening week and I'm nervous, but I think we all picked the Bears to win this game. But now I'm sitting here breaking down on tape. I'm like, man, they might actually lose this game. I've kind of talked myself into a loss already. Again, just the opening week jitters, and I usually I do that to myself. But in terms of this Titans team, last year their defensive secondary was horrible. I mean, their defense as a whole wasn't that great. You look up and down that starting 11 right now on Tennessee. It's going to be out there on Sunday. Only 5 players were actually drafted by this team. They went and they brought in a bunch of free agents and kind of put this team together, and they got some talent up there. In terms of where the Bears, I think, can take advantage of them, is again that secondary and with that Bears in their receiving core. And I think with those 3 talented receivers and Dunze and DJ Moore and also Keenan Allen, and don't forget about Cole Kmet in there and Gerald Everett. I think that's where the Bears can take advantage of them. But then we talked about earlier where we don't want everything put on Caleb Williams' shoulder. So the other matchup I look at is inside is that Jeffrey Simmons, their big defensive lineman, they're all pro defensive linemen, and that big rookie Kavonje Sweat from Texas, and how that interior of the offensive line can hold up against those 2 behemoths inside. So I think if the Bears can establish the run game, help ease some of that pain off, or the pressure, I should say, off of Caleb, now you can go ahead and use your 3 stars on the outside to go ahead and take advantage of a young secondary. Now they did add L'Jarius Sneed, who was obviously the Pro Bowl corner from KC. So they added also a couple other players here in the secondary from other teams, like I mentioned earlier. So they're not going to be as vulnerable as they were last year. But I think that's where the Bears have the advantage of is getting the ball in the hands of the playmakers and also controlling that middle of that defensive line. The other thing I like to see is Montez Sweat versus J.C. Latham, the rookie 7th overall pick, the tackle from Alabama, making his NFL start. Can Montez Sweat put that rookie on skates and provide pressure, consistent pressure on Will Levis?
Now, Alyssa, as Bears fans, we're impulsive. We draw quick conclusions. We write people off real quick, and we, anoint people real quick. But if the Bears were to struggle and potentially lose to the Titans with, Will Levis tossing it to Calvin Ridley for 2 or 3 touchdowns and Tony Pollard running wild. If the Bears, because we did this last year when they lost to the Packers, when there was all this hype about Justin Fields versus Jordan Love and the new chapter in the rivalry. I mean, the Titans aren't exactly in that same realm, but they are a lesser team in the fact that if they beat the Bears, what do you think the reaction in the Bears fandom will be if they start 0-1 and they lose to the Tennessee Titans, a game in which they are favored to win?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. And speaking as a Bears fan, we tend to overreact sometimes. And I think that,
right.
I mean, it also depends on the game. I do think that there would be some level of overreaction. If they get just the tires beat off them, I mean, that's a little different than that. That would be fair because this is a team that has a better roster and is in year 3 under Matt Eberflus, and they have, a better quarterback, and they've improved at several different positions. And if they just get smoked, then there's genuine cause for concern there. But if it's a close fought game and they, just miss, I could see a little bit of overreaction because this is a game that a lot of people have as, the Bears just easily winning. And like Danny said, kind of looking at, the tape and looking at certain matchups, and it's going to be a lot closer than people think. So trying to keep those expectations realistic, but it also does kind of, in a weird way, feel like an early must-win game just because you look at some of the, they're going to play the Texans. They had to play the AFC South 3 consecutive weeks to open the season. So you have the Texans in primetime the following week. Then you're going to Indianapolis to play Eberflus's former team. So, I mean, I feel like this is a game that they should win, but I do think it's going to be a lot closer than some people are giving them credit.
Okay, well, I guess we'll see. You guys didn't really put a lot of confidence in me. Thank you for being like, yeah, maybe
Danny
not.
got to me.
Yeah, what is this?
The double doink video got to me.
We all got.
This is Aldo's fault.
We were hopeful until we watched Aldo's friggin' video, and now we're not. It's from 6 years ago.
No, in a serious note, there is a possibility, and I don't even want to say this and speak this into existence, but I mean, if you lose to Tennessee at home, then you go to Texans, and you could be 0-2, and then you go to Indy. I mean, if you start off 0-3, talk about being deflated again.
We're not there.
That is cause for panic. That would be cause for panic.
It's game week. I'm nervous.
I'm gonna say we are 6 days removed from me predicting 11 wins and you both predicting like 9 and 10 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So
9 and
And
8.
all three of us picking the Bears to win this game.
Right. Yeah. So let's just relax. I think they're gonna be okay. Well, we should be. I hope so at least. But let's start with our news segment that we started last week. It's buy, sell, or
This is moronic.
Week 1 for everybody. So
We
guys,
practiced that so well during the pregame show.
This is moronic.
it is, Aldo. So anyway, buy, sell, or moronic. The Bears announced their captains for the 2024 season. And for the first time ever, at least that I can remember, they have more captains than they did wins last year because they have 8 of them with Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, Mercedes Lewis, TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, Jalen Johnson, and Kevin Byard. I had to take a breath.
One breath.
Yeah, I'm going to start with Alyssa. Alyssa, is this moronic or are you buying or selling it?
You want to know what? Because I'm trying to take the hopeful road. I'm going to buy it. Sure, it's a little much, but I think that you could argue it speaks to the leadership on that team, especially when you look at that list and guys like Montez Sweat and Keenan Allen are left off of it. And, this is a list that's voted on by players, and it sounds like those chosen are held in very high regard. And, it's really cool to see Caleb Williams, make the cut where, he's the first Bears rookie to be named a captain in franchise history. So I don't know. But also perhaps this means that we're done with the honorary captains too, because then it would be way excessive. And then I might be selling.
Yeah. Danny, how do you feel about 8 captains?
Well, I mean, and my first thing was like, that's moronic. But Alyssa just talked me off of that, and I'm going to sell it. First of all, 8 is a lot. 8 is a lot of captains in my opinion. But the one thing, good point, Melissa just said, it was like, this is voted on by the players, right? So the players see these 8 individuals as their leaders and their captains on their team. So that's where you have to go and respect the locker room and go ahead and name these guys 8 captains. But at one point when I saw the list, I was like, this is an episode of Oprah. You get a captaincy. You get a captaincy. You get a captaincy. Right. So it was kind of weird there.
Well, yeah, for me, a captain means like you're leading, and if half your team's a captain, and I'm not saying, I mean, that's obviously a bit hyperbolic, but having 8 captains seems like a lot. But if the players voted that way and they feel that way, and there's certain things that like they're the captain of, the captain of the secondary, the captain of the special teams, the captain of the offense, whatever it is, if you're a captain, if it works for them, I don't care. If they have to put a C on every one of those players, I don't care. If they're winning football games, make everyone a captain. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to judge it too hard. So I do what you got to do. If it helps you win games, don't care.
So you're buying then?
Can I put it on layaway? Like
keep the receipt.
Yeah,
This is moronic.
The receipt in case I want to return it, because if they start losing and they have 8 captains, I'm not so sure I want to keep that.
I'm keeping my receipt too, just in case.
Yeah, I got it just in case. It's like when you get a gift at Christmas, they include the receipt with it just in case you need to return it or it's the wrong size. Might have to do that. So let's move on from that. Danny, there was a report late last week that Ryan Poles was at 3 games over the past weekend, college football games, to do some scouting. You always say a scout's work is never done, so please give us a breakdown over the players that he might have been impressed with these games. And just for reference, those games were Georgia versus Clemson, Notre Dame against Texas A&M, and then LSU and USC.
Yeah, it's always draft season, guys. Doesn't matter if it's week 1 or week 17. It's always draft season. And last week was a hell of a week in terms of college football. The matchups were fantastic. And these 3 games featured 6 of prominent teams or in universities in the country. So there's a litany of NFL talent on the field. But I was going to go ahead and just focus specifically on a position where I feel like the Bears could be or will be addressing in the offseason, this upcoming offseason, and also the upcoming draft. And that's going to be the offense and defensive line. So you mentioned that first game with Georgia versus Clemson. We're talking about offensive line talent there with Georgia. I mean, all 5 of their starters, going from the left tackle, Ernest Green, to the right tackle, Xavier Truss, the guards, Dylan Fairchild and Tate Ratledge, all of them are on NFL radars. All of them are going to be NFL players. Even the center, Jared Wilson, is on a lot of NFL teams, watch list, going into this season. So a ton of talent there in Georgia on the offensive line. Clemson, the tackle, Blake Miller, the right tackle, is 6'7", 310. He's probably going to be a first-round pick. The left tackle, Tristan Lay, is also a first-round pick, most likely, or maybe a day 2 pick. Marcus Tate, the guard, and Walker Park. So these two teams have really good, talented, potential NFL players at the next level on their offensive lines. Defensively, Georgia always brings that talent, right? And the guy that everyone talks about is Michael Williams, number 13, the junior, 6'5", 260. He's got 15 and a half tackles for loss and 9 sacks in his 2 seasons so far, for, playing in Athens. Typical Georgia guy, big, physical, fast, strong. Talk about him right now. Is he a base 4-3 end? Is he a 5 technique and an odd man front? Is he a guy that can kick inside and probably be some a 3 technique in a 4-man scheme? So that's a guy. He did get a little banged up during the game though, so hopefully he'll be okay. But those are the guys that really we're talking about in that game. Flipping over to Notre Dame versus Texas A&M, and when I'll give props to Notre Dame and their defensive secondary. They got two players, Benjamin Morris in the corner and Xavier Watts, the free safety, are going to be NFL players. But the highlight or the guy that everyone was watching was Nick Scorton from Texas A&M, the defensive end. And some might say, that name sounds familiar. It's because last year he played at Purdue and he led the Big Ten in sacks with 10 sacks. So this is a kid and also 15 tackles for loss. This is a kid that you put on his tape, and what you see a thick, powerful build. You see solid get off of the line of scrimmage, burst, the ability to close in on a quarterback. Heavy hands, can plant and bowl a offensive tackle back into the backfield using speed and power combination. Has that pass rush repertoire. You see the hand usage. You see a swim move or rip through. Very effective spin move as a pass rusher. High intensity motor. Reminds me a lot of Jared Verst, who of course last year came out of Florida State and went 19th overall to the Rams. And not just because they both were number 5, but because in terms of the way they get to the quarterback, which is high motor, high intensity and physicality. And I think this is a guy that all NFL scouts are out there looking at. Obviously, going from the Big Ten to the SEC, it's going to be a huge jump for him in terms of ability. We'll see how he does this year. But he already had a sack in last week's game. So Nick Scorton from Texas A&M was a headliner there. In terms of the third game, we're talking about LSU versus USC. The offensive line here, they have possibly the best left tackle prospect, LSU that is, I should say, and Will Campbell. He's 6'5", 323 pounds, a first-team SEC. Again, might be the first overall left tackle taken. He's definitely a top 10 pick. They also have Emory Jones, the right tackle, who's also 6'5", 315. He's athletic enough. He might play some left tackle, might kick inside the guard. So both of their tackles there at LSU are high on NFL scouts' radars. And on defense for LSU there's Harold Perkins, who was a diminutive 5'11", 220 tweener type, who a lot of teams are not sure, is he a linebacker? Is he an edge guy? Is he a specialty guy? But this guy is productive. In 2 seasons at LSU, 26 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, 7 forced fumbles. So, those are some of the highlighted players that we took a look at this past weekend. And again, like I said, guys, it's always draft season. I'm always watching these games to highlight some of these players that potentially could be Bears next year.
I love that. That was some great stuff, Danny. And also I'm looking forward to eventually, hopefully, you breaking down some Mason Graham and Will Johnson footage for me as a Michigan fan. So, but I'm going to let's turn to this week's season opener against the Titans. Because guys, we got football this week. And we're going to take a look at some predictions. So last season, the Bears ended 12th in the NFL in total yards allowed per game with 324 yards. Will they hold the Titans under 324 yards or more than 324 yards? At first, looking at this, I'm going to take the under. First off, I think this is a different Bears defense than the one at the start of the 2024 season. You could argue that they have one of the best secondaries in the league, an improved pass rush with Montez Sweat. Derrick Henry's gone. Will Levis, what are the Titans going to get with him making, this is going to be his first full season starting. They did bring back Brian Callahan in to help him out, but I'm not really worried about the offense. Looking at this game, I'm more concerned about the defense. So, looking at this, I think this could be a statement game, an early statement game for the Bears defense. So I think I'm leaning under. What about you, John? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to take the under as well, just because I don't think this defense has regressed where they're going to be worse. And I think that they have the potential for some guys to take that next step, like we've been talking about throughout this show. So I know Will Levis may like to get vertical. There may be an explosive play here or there. I know Calvin Ridley likes to get vertical. They, Spears and Pollard coming out of the backfield, they're more of the speed guys as opposed to Derrick Henry as the battering ram. So there could be a big play given up here or there. I just don't think collectively they're gonna give up that much. So I'll say under, but I think that 324 is kind of where it's gonna lay at, maybe around like the 310, 315. But I think that we'll be underneath that. Danny, tell me why I'm completely insane.
Well, you're not insane. I'm going to go under as well, and mainly because, like I said, the Titans have added some offense. Calvin Ridley, you guys mentioned. Tyler Boyd from Cincinnati came over, and DeAndre Hopkins. I know he was on the injury report, so I'm not sure if he's going to play or not. But I think he might be trending to play, knowing him. We'll see how that goes out there. But you talked about Pollard in the backfield. But for me, I don't know about you guys, but watching the Bears, and I know it was only preseason, but this secondary has got some cockiness to them. It's got some swagger to them. And I think they feel like if they get any sort of pressure up front, that they're going to make plays on the football. They're going to pick them off. So I see the Bears picking off Will Levis 2 or 3 times, maybe even returning one for a pick 6. So I think, and the one thing about the front, we talked about Montez Sweat going up against J.C. Latham. I think he's a great tackle prospect. I think he's the guy that's going to be a future Pro Bowler, but it's his first game. He's a rookie. Montez Sweat is an established Pro Bowl player. So I like that's going to be a little pressure point there for Will Levis. And I've talked about this a couple weeks now. Darrell Taylor, the pickup they got from Seattle, I think it's a very sneaky, terrific pickup by Ryan Poles and company. I think a 6th-round pick for a guy that's going to go after the quarterback. His only job is to go after that quarterback and get the quarterback. So he'll probably be in there on certain situations and all that stuff. So I think the defensive front is going to put some pressure on Will Levis. Now I think the secondary is going to come up and make some plays. So I think I'll go under on that total number.
Look at us going 3 for 3. I mean, we agree way too much, but hopefully we're all right. We're going to switch to offense. So Vegas has set the receiving over-under for Rome Odunze in his NFL debut at 40.5 yards. So Danny, you can start us off here. Are you taking the over or under on receiving yards for Rome Odunze at 40.5?
Guys, if you watch me throughout the draft process, I'm a huge Rome Odunze fan. This guy was my number 2 rated overall player in the entire draft class. So he is going to go over that number. Heck, we just saw that one play in a preseason against the Bengals where there was one play completed to him for 45 yards. So one of those completions to Rome Odunze is already over. So I'm going to go over. I hope he goes and gets a touch on the board as well, gets those toes inside that line and gets a score as well. But we saw a little bit of what he can do, complimenting DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and Keenan Allen. And I think that Bengals game was a little bit of a preview of what we can see and expect from Rome Odunze. I think this guy's going to be a potential all-pro player eventually. I'm not saying year 1 he's going to be all-pro, but this is a guy who's got a ton of talent. And I think his ability to go ahead and make big plays is going to be evident. I think it's going to start off here in week 1.
Hey, what about you, John? What do you think? Are you taking the over or are you taking the under?
I'm going to be the wet blanket here. I love Rome Odunze, and I love his potential. I know, but I'm just going to say the under because I don't know what the game plan is going to be for Caleb Williams in his first start as an NFL quarterback in week 1. Are they going to be more conservative? How are they going to use Rome Odunze? How many times are they actually going to throw the ball? So I think that I think that they do limit his time on the field, or depending on what the scheme is going into week 1, maybe he gets a handful of targets and maybe he does go over that. But I need to see what the game plan is for a rookie quarterback in his first NFL start, and what they're going to do and how they're going to utilize the rookie wide receiver in that scheme as well. So I'll be loving it if he goes over. I'm just going to say for this particular game, I'm going to say under, but I do expect very big things out of Rome Odunze.
John almost talking me out of it. I'm gonna give me the over. Like Danny made a great point too. It could be one play, and Rome Odunze is going to be someone who stretches the field for you, and he's going to be that playmaker down the field. I mean, he could hit that over in one play. I mean, like you said. It's going to be interesting to see how much he is utilized. I know Keenan Allen is dealing with an injury right now. He was limited at practice, but nothing to the point where I expect it to impact him for Sunday. But yeah, I'm embracing the hope. Give me the over. I think Rome's going to have a decent start in his NFL debut.
The one thing with Rome that really excites me is, guys, is this is the receivers where I call he's open even if he's blanketed covered, because he's got that reach with the long, with the ability to extend away from his frame and make those plays, the body control to be able to contour to the ball. So as long as Caleb puts it in an area where Rome can open and make a play, I think that's where he can highlight and add a dimension that the Bears haven't had in recent years. A big bodied, a big play receiver that can beat you with some speed and can also beat you with size and length.
I don't know about you, Danny, but I'm looking forward to us getting back on here next week and John admitting that he was wrong Rome goes
I
over.
would love to admit that I'm wrong. That's why people was like, "Oh, you said this was going to happen. You said this." I'm like, "Good. I'm glad I was wrong. I just want them to win the darn game." I should say.
And speaking on that, based on our picks from last week when we predicted their record, we all have Chicago beating Tennessee on Sunday, unless that's changed. Although I don't know, the double doink and Danny's explanation. I mean, I'm not talking myself quite out of it, but I'm on the ledge. But Vegas has the line at 4.5 for Chicago. Before we all bet on the Bears to cover, remember Eberflus has not had much luck in close games during his 2 years with the team. Last year the Bears are 3-7 in one-score games in the fourth quarter. And also number one overall pick rookie quarterbacks making their first NFL start since 2002 or 0-14-1. Sorry, I know we're keeping it at the hope. But Danny, we're going to start with you this time. Are you taking the over under 4.5?
No, I don't think the Bears are going to cover. I think it'll be a close game. I think it was J2K in the chat said it was going to be a close game. I think that the Bears win by less than a field goal. Might have come down to a Cairo Santos last second field goal. Who knows? But I think it's going to be a close game. I think the Bears, will be less than in terms of 4.5 in terms of the over under.
John, what about you?
They're going to cover, and I'm going to tell you why.
He's finally come around.
Yeah, so listen, they're going to kick it. They're going to kick a field goal late in the game to take the lead by like 1 or 2 points, and then Will Levis is going to have to try to get vertical and go down the field, and they're going to try to start forcing things late in the game to try to win. And the defense, like I've been talking about, is going to come up with an opportunistic takeaway. There's going to be a pick six to put the exclamation point on this game, and they're going to end up winning by 7, or they're going to end up winning by 8 or 9 points because there's going to be a pick six going the other way that just dots the I on this game. They're going to take the lead late on a field goal, then throw, and then just slam the door with a pick six at the end. That's my prediction.
I'm calling in my pick right now. I'm calling in my bet right now.
John got me. I'm picking them to cover as well. And I feel like the defense is going to have their fingerprints all over it, where they come up big. They were a team that I think they were top 5 in takeaways last season. They were tied with the Niners for the most interceptions last season. I think that this defense has a real opportunity to have several takeaways, including one that could seal the game if this is a close one. So yeah, I'm picking them to cover 4.5.
And I know we joke a lot. We've been joking a lot, having a lot of fun here. But in all seriousness, the defense needs to step up this early portion of the season and not put so much pressure on Caleb and the offense. I think the defense, like I talked about, and they just seem like they have this swag or this confidence about them. And you put a little bit of pressure on the quarterback, he throws the ball up there. I think these defensive backs are now going after these balls and they're taking chances, and a lot of times they're coming up with the interceptions. So I think defense needs to step up. I think they understand the importance of week one at home. The big hype over the offseason. They want to come up on a good note. And I think a lot of them were here last year when that big deflating loss to Green Bay. I think they want to come up. I think defense is going to put on their shoulders. I think they're going to go ahead and step up real big here and just allow Caleb and the offense to kind of hopefully find their groove, and they come out here with a victory.
Right on. Well, guys, that's going to wrap up this edition of Buffone 55. We got an actual game coming up, a real honest-to-goodness football game. Season kicks off Thursday night, a Friday game in Brazil, and then college football Saturday, and boom, the first week of the NFL season on Sunday. Games starting in the morning, well, I guess depending on where you live, but starting at 1 o'clock all the way till late at Sunday. Reminder to all of you that starting next week, Buffone 55 will be live on Tuesday. Is it? Can everyone still hear me?
Yeah. The internet cut in a little bit there. You're back now. You're back.
Okay, good. Excellent. I'm going to blame Aldo for that too. Reminder to everybody that we start on Tuesday next week. From here on out, Buffone 55 will be a Tuesday show starting at 8 p.m. I think that's Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And before the clock strikes 12, Buffone 55 will pop up wherever you get your audio podcast, Apple, Spotify, Podbean, MySpace, wherever you listen to your podcast, we will be on there. Listen, before we wrap things up, tell us what you're working on over at USA Today and over on the wires?
I've been so excited this week because I get to work on pregame content, which is something I will not be saying in a few weeks, probably once it's kind of worn off its luster. But I mean, so we have this week's game covered, lots of pregame content leading up to the game, as well as after, and just it's nonstop football. This is when I am stuck in my computer all day, just writing away 100 articles a day. So make sure you check out Bears Wire. We got you covered.
Excellent. And Danny, I'm assuming you're scouting people already.
College football, baby. I'm watching college football Saturday. One game I got my eye on is Tennessee versus NC State. Tennessee's got a premier pass rusher. A lot of scouts think this guy is the elite pass rusher in this draft, and that's James Pierce Jr. He's a guy you see right there, 6'3", 243 pounds. This is a guy that's got some great takeoff, tremendous speed. He's been really productive in the SEC the last 2 years. Last year he led the SEC with 10 sacks, 15 tackles for loss. So this is a guy that I want to see go up against that veteran NC State offensive line that's returning 4 upperclassmen. And this is going to be a good test to watch James Pierce here and see what he could do versus NC State. So that's the game I'm going to be highlighting this week and watching. And again, it's always draft season for me, guys. It's always draft season.
Just an absolute machine. I don't know how you keep up with all this, but I know that I'm tired just listening to that. Just I can imagine how much effort you put into that. But just I'm so tired that I'm shutting this show down. That'll do it for this edition.
This is moronic.
Uncle Doug, remember to like and subscribe on all of your media outlets on Facebook, Twitch, X, YouTube. Like and subscribe. We're live on Tuesday night, but that'll do it for this edition of Buffone 55. For Danny and Aldo and Alyssa, I'm John Buffone. Enjoy the game, everybody. Bear down.
Hope.